we go. Hi, I'm Terry Plowman from Delaware Beach Life, and it is an honor for me to introduce our guest speaker today because he has enriched the lives of all of us who love reading. And for us readers, what better place to meet than here in the library? Bill has certainly enriched my life as the publisher of Delaware Beach Life ever since we were first introduced by our other fabulous guest this evening, Maribeth Fischer. She's a published author herself and founder and executive director of the Rehoboth Beach Writers Guild, as you probably know. And she had Bill as a guest reader at a guild event in 2018, and you can believe my ears perked up when she said that he wrote for National Geographic. I might not have been so bold to ask if he would consider writing for our little local magazine if I had known Bill's extensive resume, which includes not just the esteemed National Geographic, but also stints at the New York Daily News, the National Enquirer, where he rose to become associate editor, AARP magazine, which I think some people here might qualify for, the Saturday Evening Post, and other publications and websites. He has also published several books, including the one to be discussed this evening. But Bill did indeed agree to become a contributor to Delaware Beach Life. Thank you very much. For which he writes feature stories as well as his monthly entertaining treasure hunting column. And in fact, in case you're not familiar with his work, which would be hard to believe, I brought some copies of Delaware Beach Life over there on the counter. I chose the June 2025 edition because it has not one, but two feature stories by Bill, as well as his treasure hunting column. So feel free to pick up a copy over there if you like. And work like that by Bill has consistently won awards in state and national competitions, and it earned him the title of Writer of the Year 3 years in a row from the International Regional Media Association. So he's an international writer. How about that? But despite all these accomplishments and accolades, when I asked Bill if he had any suggestions for this introduction, he said, well, you could mention that I meet most of my deadlines.
Well, I had just missed the deadline.
Yes, once in a while. And I'll tell you, as an editor, I do appreciate that. I could say a lot more about Bill's work, about his humor, his clever wordplay, his creativity, his unique writing voice. And on top of all that, he's just a nice guy. So let's hear from the man himself. Please welcome Bill Newcott.
I remember Bill. Actually, Terry mentioned that that might meet my deadlines. The other thing, when I first became a freelancer, I had been a checkbook staff writer for my entire career, for 45, 50 years. And I started doing freelance writing, and I didn't know if I could do that, because you pitch stories and you get turned down, and you turn them in and they send them back to you, they want rewrites. And the first comment I ever got back from an editor was, your punctuation and grammar are excellent.
There's a few more things that are excellent about your writing, I would say. I'm going to begin by letting you all know that I'm a very biased interviewer because I adore this man as a writer and as a human being. And the reason for that is because Bill shows up for the things that he cares about. And for me, that's the Rehoboth Beach Writers Guild. But I also think this book is about showing up when it's not easy, showing up when you don't want to or it's difficult. And we had talked about, as a way to introduce to our audience a little bit about how this book came about, you would begin by reading a little excerpt from.
Well, I have a copy right here. This is actually the very beginning of the book. This is the prologue. It's called The Man in the Red Cap, and there's I did the photography myself. There's a picture of a man in a red cap there. Oh. And this is a new edition. I wear these to read now. The man in the red baseball cap is sitting at a sheltered picnic table, scraping at a wad of scrambled eggs, flanked by 2 slices of crispy bacon on a cardboard plate. The mountains in the distance are rendered different shades of gray by the sun, which rose 2 hours ago, and is now almost directly in the man's eyes. Still, he has situated himself to take in the sweep of the mountains, lake, and Martian-like desolation that typifies the landscape of Lake Mead National Recreation Area. A short sidewalk leads to the shelter from the parking lot. I venture up the path, pretending to be intent on taking pictures. As I pass the table, I make believe I am just noticing his red cap. emblazoned with the words, "Make America Great Again." It is 2 weeks to the day before Election Day 2024. I nod in his direction. "So what are you hoping for?" I ask him. He glances up from his eggs and gives me a toothy smile. He's a bit older than me, probably mid-70s. "Son," he says, leading me to believe he might be blind, "I just want someone to save my country." He doesn't seem ready to ask me to sit with him, so I stay where I am, across the table, about 5 feet away. "I'm worried about the country too," I say. "I'm afraid we're heading for a split we won't be able to come back from. Everyone seems so angry." "I'm not stupid," he says, as if I've somehow suggested he might be. It dawns on me that he's probably been called stupid and just wants to get that part out of the way. "I see what's happening," he says, and I can't tell if he's looking at me or past me because his sunglasses are really dark. "The people coming in here, committing crimes, taking over towns, and the government just waves them in and pays them to be here." I nod. "I guess one way to look at it," I say, "is that we live in a country with so much opportunity. People will risk everything just to get one foot planted here. We're just a few hundred miles from the Arizona-Mexico border, forbidding, sun-baked terrain, not unlike the vista we're looking at right now. I cannot imagine taking my child by the hand and dragging her across that triple-digit hellscape on the chance I might find a job that will pay me $3 an hour." His gaze seems not to have shifted. "Oh, I got nothing against those people coming in," he says. "Hell, my grandfather came here because things were so shitty in Europe. They did it legally, you see. I got the papers." He says those words with such immediacy, I half expect him to produce the papers from his rear jeans pocket. The light behind the man's sunglasses shifts a bit, and I can tell now that he's kind of glaring at me. But as our gazes scrape against each other, flint-like, the spark of a book idea flickers in the back of my brain. Impulsively, I share the notion with the man. What would it be like to see beyond the divisions in America and instead look for the common denominators that link everyone here, no matter what their political arc? "Well, I sure as hell don't want to be in any book," he says. But not in an unpleasant manner. "I think I just want to eat my breakfast now." In truth, I've always resisted the notion of left and right. The term seems like an overly simplistic way to divide people, and it doesn't have a very noble history. The distinction was first coined at the dawn of the French Revolution, when National Assembly opponents of King Louis XIV sat to the left of the presiding officer, and supporters of the crown sat to his right. And we all know how that turned out. By the time I arrive at Harry Reid International Airport, I've decided to give this project a whirl. I will fly home to Delaware, make a plan, and hit the road. Maybe this is a classic middle child project launched by a kid with his arms outstretched between a warring pair of brothers. With any luck at all, I'll meet people who, despite seemingly unbridgeable political and social differences, that have found ways to strike unlikely alliances without sacrificing their principles. I'm not looking for a kumbaya, can't we all agree moment. I'll settle for a lukewarm, we are not that different respite. It's a mission worth pursuing. It's a country worth saving. Get back up there so you don't forget what the book looks like.
So clearly you found what you were looking for because we have the book. And my first question is just, was it easier or more difficult than you had anticipated?
It was so freaking easy.
Really?
That's the thing. That's part of the core of the book is I did not have to look far. And my publisher said, well, you got to do abortion, you have to do gun rights, you can't just talk about sunrises and flowers and babies. You have to find people who have core beliefs in these areas. And so I just put out the call, what's the name of the organization? Braver Angels, thank you. This is my coach, Caroline. I'll ask her my name later. Like Braver Angels, that have made a mission of bringing people of opposite sides together, but they generally tend to be looking for compromises, for ways that they can pursue policies that are like halfway between their positions. And I approached some of them saying, who do you know who's working on abortion. And almost immediately I found a group up in Madison, Wisconsin. Absolute pro-lifers, absolute pro-choicers, who on their own decided they were going to find ways to make life better for women and children, because that was what their core values were. They had different ideas of how they were taking care of women, they had different ideas of how they were caring for children, but that was their core value. And they ended up proposing 8 laws that went to the state legislature for mother health and children's health. And most importantly, they became friends. These women, mostly women, there were a couple men in the group, but the man I talked to said, I knew I had to keep my mouth shut all the time because I was not welcome. I didn't have any input whatsoever. So he's there like the token guy, but he was fine. He had a good time. And they just became the best of friends. And that happened in Nashville. We talked to people about guns control. So, following the Covenant school shooting, that massacre in the school, a terrible, terrible event. People were demanding, they went to the governor and the legislature, demanding they do something about guns. Something, they didn't care what, they wanted something done. So the state legislature met for 10 days, special session called by the governor. And they immediately started yelling at each other and hating each other, and ended up recessing after 10 days, approving some $1 million program for gun safety ads on TV, which is really lame. Coincidentally, or at the same moment, down the street, 2 groups of pro-gun and pro-gun control people got together at a conference hall, and in 5 days came up with several laws about gun safety, about gun education in the schools, about keeping guns out of the hands of people who were having emotional, mental issues at the time. And they proposed those laws, and 2 of those became laws in the state, where the legislature couldn't come up with anything. The people came up with their own laws.
Was this called the Builders Movement? The
Builders
one in
Movement.
Nashville? Because I was fascinated. It was one of my favorite chapters. And anybody who knows me knows I don't talk about politics, partly because I'm no good at it. I don't know how to do it well. I get defensive, I get angry. But when I read about the Builders Movement, which was the gun violence in Nashville, I had such a longing for us to have something like that.
Builders Movement also put me in with the abortion groups up in.
Okay. But like they had a firearms instructor in that group you were talking about, with a teacher who had lost 2 children in the school shoot. Like the diversity of people, I thought that was such a great, such a great chapter,
It's funny, I think every chapter in the book, and this is gratifying to me, has had someone come and tell me that's their favorite chapter of the book.
We need that, one for every chapter.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No.
Another of my favorite chapters was, it was early, New York City, Laughing Through Fear. Can you just tell us a little bit? I don't want you to give away everything in the book, but just a little hint of what that one is about.
There's a comedian by the name of Eric Angel, who is Jewish, and he's from Israel. Actually, he was an actor in Israel, and he decided to do stand-up comedy, and he moved to New York City. And he was doing Jewish comedy, you know, the kind of stuff you expect from the Jewish comedians, about mothers, about, careers and all this stuff. And he got a little tired of that, and he wanted to do something different. And he noticed that there were also, at the comedy clubs, Islamic comedians, there were comedians who were Hindu, there were comedians from all around the world, from different backgrounds who might not really, you might not think they might get along particularly well. But he noticed that backstage, they were all enjoying each other completely, because comedians have a special bond. So Eric came up with a program called Comedy for Peace. And he travels the country to this day with a Muslim comedian, a Jewish comedian. It sounds like a beginning of a joke. Muslim comedian, a Jewish comedian, a Hindu comedian walk into a bar and tell jokes. And they tell jokes about themselves. And they tell jokes about how people see them and how they see other people. And it's you can find them online. Eric has a YouTube page. It's called Comedy for Peace, and he's a terrific guy, and I really enjoyed talking with him. But his approach was, he saw the similarities to begin with. He didn't go searching them out. He said, wait a second, we all have the same sensibility. And it turned out, as I talked to different comedians, so a Christian comedian, Paul Schisler, also, who I actually spoke with out in LA. So you have four. You have the Jewish, Hindu, Muslim, and Christian comedians all walking into a comedy bar together. And they found that they laugh about the same things. But actually, the jokes turn out to be the same things. They talk about mothers, they talk about jobs and children, and how they're misunderstood, and turns out we're all misunderstood in the same ways. So thank you, I love that chapter as well.
So do you have a favorite? I want your favorite chapter, if you have one, and then the most difficult one for you to write.
Probably my favorite chapter is the one that features my son, Ben, who's here tonight. Standing by the door. He's a bouncer tonight. Ben lives out in Newport Beach, California. And it is a very, very stridently conservative area. And Ben has a collection of friends who've known each other for many, many years, going back to high school, some of you. And they are across the board. They are absolutely, you pick a spot on the spectrum and they are all in there. I don't mean the spectrum, I mean the political spectrum. And they get together and they call Man Night. In Ben's backyard, they light a fire and they all sit around and they talk. And I think that the general consensus of people would say, oh, well, they must get together and avoid politics. That's the one thing they don't talk about. No. They talk about politics, they talk about family and faith and friends. But they also talk about politics, and they don't shy away from it. But these guys love each other. You sit there listening to them, you don't want the night to end, because they're just prodding at each other and having fun at each other's expense, but it is all in love. And the chapter is kind of a loose one, because it's about friendship. Because I think we keep hearing about friendships that have been shattered in these political times, and more than a few. And I think, sorry to say it, I think some of it is from not trying. From saying, okay, I don't want to talk to someone who doesn't agree with me, no matter how much I love them, or how much I know them. So we sort of silently draw the lines and avoid each other. And I just thought they were a great example.
You actually have a quote in your book. A 2023 study by the American Psychiatric Association found that 1 in 5 Americans had become estranged from a family member, blocked a family member on social media, or skipped a family event due to disagreements on controversial topics, which 1 in 5, that is a lot. That was shocking to me. So, all right, most difficult chapter.
You know, it's all so much fun. People love to talk, and I guess I've been doing this for a couple of years. And the one thing you learn is everyone has a story, and no one really needs a lot of prompting to tell you their story. It's just like it's human nature.
Well, I have heard it said many times that you should write the book that only you can write, and I think you have. And I could tell the audience why I think you are the perfect person to write this book, but I'm going to actually turn that on you and ask you to praise yourself and say, like, do you think this was the book that only you could write, and why?
I do. I mean, every writer has their own unique voice, and every writer has a way of looking at the world that makes them a writer. There's a story told in the beginning of the book about how I got the way I am. And it goes back to when I was 5 years old. I was raised in Dumont, New Jersey by 2 parents who were FDR, New Deal, Depression-era parents. And in 1960, their 5-year-old son, Billy, told them, you know, during when President Eisenhower was president, he had a heart attack, and Vice President Nixon stood in for him. And so he already has experience as president. So I think he should probably be the one who we all vote for. And here's the thing. My parents didn't try to change my mind. They didn't. I said, well, this is a weird kid. Maybe he's not really ours. But they did not, for 1 second, say, oh no, here's why you're wrong. And I was raised that way to think for myself. What I love writing about people who think for themselves. And this book is full of people who have decided to think for themselves. Format-wise, the reason this is a good book for me is because I've been a magazine writer all my life. And I've always written short form. I've tried writing long form. I'm ADD. I don't know what it is. I can't write anything long. So my 2 other books that are excerpted from Delaware Beach Life, they're magazine articles, and this is 19 little magazine articles about people around the country, thematically joined. And I think at the end I take a stab at tying it all together. Probably the fact that I can isolate out subjects like that and fully develop these things in a compact way that's probably a reason I can do it.
So you got 2 of my 4. I'll tell you my other 2
Okay.
reasons why I think. But the thing about how you grew up and the family that you were raised in, but also the family that you raised, can you share with us your alternate dedication? Or
I don't know if my kids have read this part of the book. Toward the end of the book, I dedicate this book to Carolyn because she's been so endlessly supportive of me in the years since I started being a freelancer, and before that, when I'm writing on my own without the cushion of a corporate entity sending me a check every week. I had a secondary dedication that I thought about dedicating to my kids, and the dedication read something like, to my children, left, right, and center, but centered in love. My kids were all raised to think for themselves, and you can tell that by their political outlooks. They think very differently at times. They are strident in their beliefs at times. But man, there are no people that love each other more than my kids. They will just hang out together for days and just chat and laugh and enjoy the things that they share in common. And that's a model, I think, for all of us. But I don't know, do you guys disagree?
Yeah.
Okay. My son Ben and my son Nick.
I'm on the right, he's on the left.
I was going to leave that to you to say, Nick.
So yeah, I thought that whole the way you grew up, where right or left was not the most important thing at all in your
I must add about their mom, my late wife Cindy, who raised them. She was the most strident political person I've ever known in my life. Absolutely no question about it. Yet she was a person who had an enormous heart for people who were utterly unlike her. And because I was at work all day, I did raise those guys. Their mother did, and she raised them the same way. She wasn't always happy with the way they thought.
So my other things are your comedy. I think one of the lines in the comedy chapter is that great comedy is all about tension, and you have a great sense of humor. You have an offbeat sense of humor. It's one of the things that
That's
you're
the
known
word that
for.
keeps thrown around about me. Offbeat. Is this true?
We'll ask Terry. But I think that humor was really, you were in conversations with people where they were tough conversations, and that ability to portray them or to throw humor in, I felt like added a lot. And then the other thing for me, and it's one of the things I loved in this book, is you have a long career as a travel writer. You know how to write about places in a beautiful way. And I felt like, I think I said this to a couple people, whatever you agree or disagree on, read his descriptions and you can agree that we live in a beautiful country, just the vistas, just the landscapes. And so I have asked you, I was going to ask you this, to read a couple paragraphs just to give you a flavor of that beautiful travel writing, landscape writing.
Well, Don't mind if I do. This is it's set in the Sonoran Desert. This is a chapter about how in Arizona, arch conservatives, and Arizona has a long history of this, going back to Barry Goldwater, where conservatives are fiercely defending the environment, always have, along with liberals. And that's a tradition they're not giving up on. And this is a chapter about how conservatives and liberals have joined together to fight an interstate that was being put through the Sonoran Desert just to put a bypass around Tucson, so the trucks wouldn't be piling up on each other. And this is just the opening description. It begins with I'm standing out in the middle of the Sonoran Desert. If you've never heard a saguaro cactus sing, then you have most likely never stood amidst a remote Sonoran Desert cluster of them, while a gentle wind coursed through their spiny bristles, sighing soft verses of dreamlike desolation. It is spring. The desert, which I've barely left even on the long drive from Southern California to this spot, is still awaiting the hot box of summer. And so even in the late morning, the desert scrub rustles with passing denizens. A loping jackrabbit, a scuttling Gambel's quail, and high above the saguaro, 20 feet up, burst the white and yellow blossoms that draw bats and bees for their annual duties as prolific pollinators. From North Sandario Road, about a mile to the west, the throaty blat of a diesel truck engine rumbles across the landscape. The oral intrusion fades into the distance, and then it's gone.
So yeah.
Sometimes when I write something like that, I feel like I'm showing off a little bit, because actually in my earlier career, when I wrote for National Geographic to start there, my job was writing photo captions. We called them legends, and each one generally would be 35 to 50 words, and you had a magnificent National Geographic photograph that you had to elaborate on, and you couldn't pull any information from the story itself. You had to do all your own research with the photographer, what he wrote about, and then you had to, because they knew no one read the stories, they only read the photo captions, it had to be structured as a beginning, middle, and end if you read just the photo captions. So what I learned there was how not to do that. You know, how to use a couple of words to set a stage, just to set a scene. And it might be that it helped me that I know how to use, or I've got practice using keywords. You know, just the right word. But going on, I was doing when I was with AARP, and I was doing a celebrity interview with Ed Asner out in California, a guy from Mary Tyler Moore and Lou Grant. And I was interviewing at his home, and it was a video. We were doing a show, and he lived in a very modest little house near the studios. And I was doing my stand-up, my walk and talk outside in the street before we went in. And all I said was, I'm here in Studio City where there aren't even any sidewalks. And here's the home of one of the most famous people in the world. And so we finished it, and the producer comes running up to me. She says, no sidewalks. Yes, that tells the whole thing. The whole neighborhood is described. How did you know to say no sidewalks? I said, well, look around. There's no sidewalks. So, yeah, there's something to be said for brevity. When I was at National Geographic doing photographs, we actually created an organization called ASP, ASP, the American Short Prose Society, and it was a snake.
I'm the one with the 300-word limit, so I know all that.
Which I violate with great regularity.
Yes, well, we've had some conversations. No, but for me, that was because the book is set up as a journey. It's a journey across the country in search of this elusive thing. And so I felt like I was on that journey in the best way.
Thank you.
Did writing this book change you in any way?
I think it's a reflection of me more than it changed me.
And I was curious about that because you spent a couple years, basically, I mean, I know you wrote many other things, but...
Mostly for Terry. In fact, there are 2 chapters in this book that are actually ripped off from Terry's magazine.
Did you know that, Terry?
I do now.
And he paid me, so...
Was that difficult for you, working, because you did have a constraint? in that all of you were working, they were all part of this journey.
Yeah.
I could see how in some ways that could be difficult. I could see how it could be freeing because you didn't have to keep coming up with new.
Well, you know, I mean, I had no budget for this book. You would say, oh, the publisher paid for all that travel for you? No, the publisher did not do that. I'm a travel writer, and I get to travel around the country, and destinations pay for me to come out and write about them, or their publicists. And so, to some degree, the book was reverse engineered from those press trips.
There's a number of the people that you talk to, and you yourself talk about the media, social media, and the way that is part of the problem.
Absolutely.
Have you changed in your views of how you use social media, or?
What an interesting question that is, because no. Well, here's the thing, okay, and I get into this in the last chapter of the book, because I know people are going to read this book and say, wait a minute, he's talking about this kumbaya, let's get along. Let's look at his social media. And you'll find that on social media, when I am addressing politicians, when I'm addressing people who set themselves up as thought leaders, I am vicious. I am take no prisoners, how dare you. If I'm dealing with people who are not professional provocateurs, as so many people are, I try really hard to find out what they're thinking. And incidentally, if I may, just interject here, I didn't write this book for conservatives and liberals to feel better about themselves, you know, to read the book and say, oh, I guess I'm okay, because I like other people. It sounds like a sales pitch, and maybe it is, but it's not really. I bought this book to be given to people. I bought this book for you to buy it. If you must lend it to someone, go ahead. But ideally, you'll buy another copy. And give it to someone who you think is struggling with this whole us versus them. Why do we all hate each other? Because I think the book is tangible proof. Because I did not do a lot of cherry picking. I did not have a failed chapter in this book. I did not fail. I didn't find anyone who wouldn't talk to me about the subjects at hand when I told them what I was doing. I batted 1,000% going out and tracking down people, which is probably something I shouldn't admit to, because it makes the book a lot easier than you might think it is. But there is this hunger, I believe, and it gets more voracious every day, I think, among people. And it's unspoken, and it's tragic that we don't acknowledge it, because we have been set up against each other by media, by politicians, by social media people who say to us, you don't need those people, you need me. I'm the one who's going to make you feel comfortable by telling you what you want to know. And we gravitate to that. Who wouldn't? But it's artificial. It has been set up deliberately. And I'm talking about everyone from Fox News to MSNBC, or MS Now. They're saying, we understand you. They don't understand you. Don't talk to them anymore. This book is an attempt to get people to understand. I'm not trying to tear down the walls. I'm trying to get people to find out that those walls, they're artificial, and they don't really...
So the writer Virginia Evans, who wrote The Correspondent, it's a book written in the form of letters, and as a result of that novel, written in the form of letters, which speaks to the importance of letter writing versus emails, because it takes more thought. All kinds of people are writing letters now. People who have written letters in years are writing letters. And I wondered if there was one small thing that you would like people to do as a result of reading your book, aside from buying it.
Mostly buying it. I think the thing to do is turn social media against itself and reach out to the most. I consider myself a left-leaning moderate. I spend a lot of time on Newsmax because I want to understand the people on Newsmax, and I Carolyn will attest to this, I will stay up too late, going back and forth with people to engage them in conversation. Just to engage them in conversation. And you don't have to go back and forth too many times before you start cracking the shell. And then just agree with them on something, because no one disagrees with you 100% on anything. You can, within a couple exchanges, find out what they're really, where you and they have some common ground. And it's not that hard. Believe it or not, it's not that difficult. And I figure I'm doing one person at a time. And there are certain people. There's a guy named A.M. Vet on Newsmax, who I have been communicating with for about 2 years now. And that went from an absolutely adversarial relationship to grudging respect and a sharing of ideas with some regularity. Except Newsmax has done away with their message boards, which is interesting that they did that, because all of a sudden you can't have that interaction with people anymore.
I thought this was beautiful. You say, what if we were all to one day come to an agreement that despite our vast differences, we all have one job to do as Americans, and that is to preserve America as a place where people can think and act differently, can disagree bitterly, can choose not to like each other, yet also respect each other's roles in making our society work. I just love that idea, that's what
I'm
we
here
want
laughing
to
because
do.
I don't remember writing that. That happens to you. Doesn't it happen to you?
It's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
Are
excellent.
you feeling pretty good about that?
Yeah, pretty darn good. That happens to you, right?
It does.
You'll read some say, I love this part they do, and then you'll say, what book was that from? Who did that?
Yeah.
What chapter is that from?
It's page 164.
All right. I'll have to look it up.
Nope, page 180.
Okay. Oh, that's when I'm wrapping it up.
You're wrapping it up.
That's when I'm finishing it. I was distressed when I numbered up the pages and it was barely 200 pages long. I felt like if I'm going to write a meaningful book, it had to be at least 250 to 300 pages. And I went to my editor and he said, no, that's enough.
So we'll collect some questions. Did you always know this was going to be the title?
No, the title was, in fact, I still call it sometimes, Worth Saving was the title. I still kind of like that one better because it's softer. It seems more embracing. Worth Saving. Divided We Stand is okay. And it does get to the hood of it. Except there have been, if you go to Amazon, there's like 12 books named Divided We Stand. Yeah,
Because you
so.
can't copyright titles.
You
So.
can. I could have called it Gone with the Wind.
Do we have questions?
Yeah, we do. So if you had to put it in a nutshell, what did you find to be the tie or the ties that bind? Or not?
People want a connection. People want, we're social creatures. And when it appears to me, evidence in the book and what in my experience is when people have a barrier between them, they start looking for ways to dig under the barrier or go around the barrier, go over the barrier, because that's human nature. We want to connect with each other. And I keep coming back to this, but we live in an age where we're being told, don't bother with that wall, because we got all we need on this side of the wall. And that's just, it's not true, and it's also counter to human nature. So in the end, that's the tie that binds us all, is that we are fellow humans.
All right. Was it difficult to write this book given your own political views? Do you find you could be objective?
The nice thing about the book, the premise of the book is you don't have to be objective. You can hold your positions and not give 1 inch. There's not a person in this book who surrendered 1 inch of their ideological territory. So it mattered not where I am on the political social spectrum, because the premise of the book is, doesn't matter. What you want, what we all want, is to fill in that ditch that we've dug between us and everyone else. So it didn't bother me. I think the stronger, I found stronger people's strident positions were, the more they relished connecting with someone on the other side. It made them feel better about themselves, it made them feel better about those people, and about humanity in general.
So in your travels, did you find any major differences with different regions that were a part of your book? Were some areas more united and some more divided?
What I found were the things that united people were different. I spent a good deal of time in Texas in this book, and except in there, it started out as 3 chapters, and I put them together and called it 3 Lessons from a Texas Town. And I tell you what, you can be as far left or as far right as you want and live in Texas. You love being a Texan. They are so drawn together by their history, their shared nationhood. There's a mythology that it's kind of like they had their own Odysseus story there, with the guy going from the Alamo up to the state capitol to announce what's going on. And I think I tried to project that out a little bit in the chapter, saying, why can't we nationalize that sense? We just had the 250th anniversary of our country, which was a pretty good opportunity, and we saw some of it, of people to bond together and say, oh yeah, let's put aside our differences for this one day, and then go back to our corners.
So you were talking about combining chapters. Did you need to cut or edit much content from the final production?
I had a couple chapters that I loved, and my editor said they can't go in the book. One was a chapter on sunsets. And I actually had a scientist in England who I interviewed for the book who talked about the physiological nature of sunsets that causes people who are witnessing a sunset together to bond together no matter what their backgrounds are. I love that chapter, and it sits in my drawer, and I want to sell it to somebody because I think it's pretty good. But that was the only one that I guess we threw out.
Did you find that faith or religiosity played any role in divisiveness?
Interesting question. I'm a person of faith myself, and I know what the question is. The question is that notion we have in our country that religion divides people, and I think you can probably make the case that religion divides people, but notions of faith do not necessarily do so. I spent some time the chapter in Arizona about immigration. And I visited a few churches down there where there were very, very conservative churches that were doing all they could to outreach to immigrants, legal and illegal, in Arizona. But what they found was they had to keep it on QT. They couldn't tell everybody in the community what they were doing because they knew they would get backlash because that wasn't what they were supposed to be doing. So that was probably the most disheartening chapter that I wrote, because faith is about doing the right thing, and when you're doing the right thing, you should be an example to other people so they can see that you're doing the right thing, and they'll say, oh, I'll do the right thing too. And we live in this climate right now, particularly in some parts of the country, where doing what you're convinced is the right thing is not socially acceptable.
What do we do with fear or anger on either side?
Well, I've had enough children to know you don't tell them not to be mad. That's not an approach, and you do see that a lot. You say, what are you so mad about? Why do you feel the way you do? The question, the mistake is not in asking why do you feel the way you do. The question is why are you so mad about it? Fear is when we don't understand something. When our mind isn't processing what's happening. Fear of the other, fear of a belief system that's foreign to you. And my job, my career has always been ask questions. And probably that's the way I was raised, was ask questions. I think that's the way I raised my children. Ask questions, because the more you ask questions of people, the better you'll understand them. And in the process, the more human they become to you. So I think we live in this environment now where we don't ask questions. The media doesn't ask us questions. The media tells us how to feel, how to think. Social media tells us how to think. And absolves us of having to think for ourselves. And I think the clearest way to overcome fear, and I think the book illustrates this, is approach the people you don't understand and ask them, what makes you tick?
Well, the other thing that happens when you ask questions is you get stories. And I don't think we get stories on social media. We get opinions. We get stories are a whole different thing. And I think your book is about the stories. And that's the other reason why only you could have written this book. I have a couple paragraphs, just real short paragraphs, if you would read to end. I had mentioned these to you. I know you have it marked. I just thought it was a great way to sum up what you're doing in this book and what this book is about.
This is from a chapter about my sister-in-law, of all people. Jackie and her husband, they lived in Swannanoa, North Carolina, which was unhelpfully swept away by the floods a few years ago. And actually, this is the first chapter that I wrote for the book. This is when I heard their story, I said, that's where the book's going to come from. This was right around the time before the election. And so they were up in their mountain home, and they were totally kept separated from the world because the bridge at the bottom of the hill had been washed out, and it was just them and some other people on the top of this hill. And out of nowhere, one day, come these guys in camouflage with weapons, and they're extremely scary. And it turns out they were just there to help. They were this group that just goes out and responds proactively to natural disasters. And so the chapter is about that, how they could not have been people more different than each other, and yet they were happy to be helped. And it turned out the people who were helping were saying thank you all the time for allowing us to come to assist you. There was just this incredible meeting of people who needed to be helped and people who needed to help. So that's what this ended. His name was Jay, the guy who was the main helper in this story. It's easy to think of people like Jay, who hurl themselves into service to individuals whose politics are a mystery, as some sort of benevolent outlier, big-hearted throwbacks in an age when most of us live on isolated islands of selfishness. But I suggest there's something uniquely generous in the American ethos. Historically, U.S. citizens have been by far the world's most plentiful supplier of foreign humanitarian aid. Even in the economic chaos that came on the heels of COVID-19, individual charitable giving by Americans set new records. Despite the hatred and malevolence that we see depicted just about everywhere, in the news and on TV, despite the venom that spits from X and comment boards, Americans don't really hate each other. When the rains come and the fires rage, when the markets crash and people are hungry, political and social differences aren't just irrelevant, they're invisible. We're not that much different from Jay. We're just here to help. I cannot tell you how full my heart is with this room of people here today. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for having any kind of interest in this little book.